All right, hello everyone. We're just going to do a quick sound check here to make sure that folks can hear us. It looks like we've got a lot of folks on the chat as well. So please, as the presentation goes on, submit your questions. Good? Okay. Well, hello. I'm Mark Howard, Branch Chief with the Department of State's Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration. Let me begin by saying thank you for your interest and engagement with the Exchange Visitor Program and for the opportunity for me to share with you some important information about my office. The following presentation will help explain the structure and creation of the Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration, as well as what we propose to do in partnering with you as sponsors of the program. We will open up for questions and answers. Oh, okay. It looks like, as is common, we've got a little bit of a technical glitch. We're gonna pause and restart. I've been told by our IT folks here that if people are having trouble, that they can refresh their page. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Let me begin again from the top. Since we are recording this webinar, we did get that question earlier about whether we'd be recording this for those of you that weren't able to make the live session. Yes, we are. So let me again start from the top. My name is Mark Howard. I'm the branch chief with the Department of State's Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration. I want to say thank you for your interest and engagement with the Exchange Visitor Program and for the opportunity for me to share with you some important information about my office. The following presentation will help explain the structure and creation of the Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration, as well as what we propose to do in partnering with you. I want to let you know that if this does look like a familiar presentation, we are opening it up at the end for some questions and answers. So stay tuned for that. At any time during the presentation, you can type questions into the live chat space to the right of the video. Start typing where you see the line that says say something, located at the bottom of the live chat space. We'll try our very best to answer as many questions as possible. Also, as I mentioned, we do plan to record this webinar and post it on the academic sponsors section of the J1Visa.state.gov website at some time in the near future. I'll send all sponsors a link to the recording once the video is ready. Before we discuss specifics about the structure and initiatives of the office I represent, I'll briefly cover the Exchange Visitor Program and the structure of our office. Here's an outline of what we'll be discussing with you today. So, the purpose of the Exchange Visitor Program is to provide foreign nationals with opportunities to participate in educational and cultural programs in the United States and return home to share their experiences and to encourage Americans to participate in educational and cultural programs in other countries. Annually, the Exchange Visitor Program provides opportunities for approximately 300,000 new foreign visitors from over 200 countries and territories. J1 exchange visitors experience the United States, its society and culture, and engage with Americans on a daily basis. These programs are sponsored by nearly 1,500 for-profit, nonprofit, or federal, state, or local government entities that are designated by the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, at the U.S. Department of State. ECA refers to these designated entities as sponsors. And that's the term that I'm going to be using for the rest of the presentation. So, the Office of Private Sector Exchange, which is the office that the Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration went through an extensive reorganization in 2013, effectively doubling its staff and organizing itself into 4 offices. To briefly explain, these offices include the Office of Designation, which many of you are familiar with. They maintain close day-to-day liaison with sponsors on all aspects of Exchange Visitor Program Administration. Additionally, the Office of Designation oversees designations and redesignations of sponsor organizations. They also approve or deny requests from Exchange Visitor Program sponsors on behalf of exchange visitors for things like reinstatement or extensions of their program status, changes of program category, and program transfers in accordance with Exchange Visitor Program regulations. The Office of Exchange Coordination and Compliance investigates serious complaints or incidents received from the general public and/or exchange visitors. When necessary, the Office of Compliance also recommends sanctions or corrective action plans of department-designated sponsor organizations. The Office of Private Sector Exchange Policy and Program Support Unit is responsible for developing policy and regulations that guide and direct the Exchange Visitor Program, as well as ensure all offices within the Office of Private Sector Exchange have the appropriate and sufficient resources to support the office's overall mission. The office I represent, the Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration, or OPA, monitors and assists designated Exchange Visitor Program sponsors to enforce and ensure full compliance with established department policy and statutory and regulatory requirements, with the key objective of safeguarding the health, safety, and welfare of exchange visitors. Additionally, OPA reviews and resolves Exchange Visitor Program-related complaints and incidents reported to the department. In 2014, OPA established an academic and government unit to enhance the office's engagement with American institutions of higher education, research labs, and U.S. government agencies that are sponsors of the Exchange Visitor Program. When combined, the academic and government J1 categories represent the largest number of sponsors and exchange visitors across the entire Exchange Visitor Program. This next slide is a side-by-side comparison of the Office of Designation and the Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration, OPA. We created this slide to distinguish between these two offices since they are the most likely offices that you're going to come in contact with as a sponsor. While OPA works closely with our colleagues in the Office of Designation, we are a distinct and different office. We do not have direct oversight of the designation and redesignation process, nor do we oversee visa administration, for example, extensions or change of category requests. In brief, OPA addresses participant issues, problems, and complaints, monitors the toll-free hotline, and responds to complaints and incidents that come in via J1Visas at state.gov. We also conduct field visits or field site reviews of sponsors to evaluate special issues identified through internal reviews. At times, we organize and carry out large program monitoring exercises and provide recommendations for in-depth program investigations to the Office of Compliance. To help explain that a little bit more, I've got a couple of examples here to provide some more clarity. If an exchange visitor is found to be wrongfully terminated, the Office of Designation would be your point of contact for reinstating the record in CVIS. Likewise, designation will remain your contact for answering daily administrative and regulatory questions, submitting annual reports, pay.gov questions, and processing redesignation applications. You would contact OPA in case of an exchange visitor's death or serious injury while on program. Another scenario might include a J1 professor or scholar contacting OPA if they feel that their academic sponsor is not fully meeting the terms of their original contract. Additionally, OPA may reach out to your institution to inquire about academic training where exchange visitors appear to be in the United States primarily for work rather than academic study, a potential violation of Exchange Visitor Program regulations. A big part of OPA's engagement with sponsors is in response to incidents. An incident is a report from a sponsor regarding some issue with its exchange visitors that requires the department's attention. Pursuant to 22 CFR 62.13d, sponsors are required to inform the department of any serious problem or controversy which could be expected to bring the Department of State or the sponsor's exchange visitor program into notoriety or disrepute. If a sponsor fails to notify OPA of a serious issue, it is noted as a potential regulatory violation. OPA developed this incident report form to help guide sponsors on the type of information they should collect before reporting an incident to the department. While in some cases you may choose to call OPA first to discuss an incident, all incidents should ultimately be reported using this form and emailed to this email address, agalert@state.gov. Sponsors must inform OPA on or before the next business day of any serious problem or controversy that could be expected to bring, again, the Department of State, the Exchange Visitor Program, or the sponsor's Exchange Visitor Program into notoriety or disrepute. This includes any potential litigation related to a sponsor's Exchange Visitor Program in which the sponsor or an exchange visitor may be a named party. OPA produced this rubric to help sponsors know when and what to report. We encourage sponsors to download a copy of this incident reporting rubric via the academic sponsors section of the J1Visa.state.gov website. Examples of reportable incidents include death or serious injury of an exchange visitor, sexual abuse, arrest of an exchange visitor or involvement of an exchange visitor as a victim of a serious crime, or any other event that could bring the department or the exchange visitor program into notoriety or disrepute. Now, an important part of all of this is to understand that the department's request for sponsors to report incidents is not necessarily out of concern for how sponsors handle these situations. In fact, many sponsors have robust procedures in place for appropriately handling serious incidents. Rather, I'd like to highlight 3 important areas where the department uses incident data. The first one is public diplomacy objectives. The Exchange Visitor Program is a public diplomacy program. When appropriately reported, serious incidents are escalated to department colleagues who operate in close contact with the foreign governments of exchange visitors. When informed of serious incidents, the department is better prepared to respond urgently to foreign government's official inquiries related to the department's view on a particular situation. Metrics. The department uses trends to more effectively write and revise policies that address exchange visitor health, safety, and welfare concerns. The better we understand the types and numbers of incidents affecting our exchange visitor program nationally, the better we can assess current and future guidance. OPA may also report statistics about incidents and complaints it receives at conferences or via webinars like this one. We believe it is also helpful for sponsors to learn about these national trends so that you too can be proactive in helping exchange visitors have a better and safe experience in the United States. And the last part of this is resources for sponsors. Not all sponsors realize that the department might have guidance and resources that you may not have already considered. For example, in some cases, we might be able to work with our colleagues in the Bureau of Consular Affairs to expedite visa requests for surviving family members following the death of one of your exchange visitors. In addition to processing incidents, OPA may also be in contact with a sponsor regarding a complaint. A complaint is any expression or concern about an exchange visitor and or a sponsor's administration of a J1 visa program. And a complaint comes from any source other than the sponsor. OPA receives complaints from a variety of sources, including, but not limited to, exchange visitors, both current and former, third parties, for example, foreign agents, host employers, and domestic agents, the Bureau of Consular Affairs, Congress, members of the media, workforce groups, NGOs, and family members of exchange visitors, just to name a few. Complaints may be received from the J1 Visa hotline that's listed here, the J1Visas at state.gov email box, or via some other means of correspondence. These points of contact, specifically the J1Visas at state.gov, as well as the hotline number you see on your screens, is given to exchange visitors upon issuance of their J1 visa at the U.S. Embassy or Consulate. There are a variety of different types of complaints, but OPA's paramount goal when handling a complaint is ensuring the exchange visitor's health, safety, and welfare are taken care of. We are aware that some disenchanted exchange visitors may use the complaint system to try to get their sponsors in trouble with the department. OPA program analysts have experience with and knowledge of fact-finding and investigative techniques, principles, practices, and evaluative methods to properly and objectively handle complaints to the resolution. This next graphic I'm going to show you shows the incident and complaint process flow and type of email you can expect to receive from OPA in response. OPA uses a case management system, or CMS, to log, respond to, and track complaints and incidents concerning all exchange visitors. CMS is separate from CVIS. Numerous management, operation, and technical security controls are in place to protect CMS data in accordance with the Federal Information Security Management Act of 2002 and the information assurance standards published by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. These controls include regular security assessments, physical and environmental protection, contingency planning, media handling, configuration management, boundary and information integrity protection, for example, firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and antivirus softwares, and regular audit reports. All CMS users access this system through a firewall-protected environment. Only Office of Private Sector Exchange support staff and CMS administrators have access to CMS data. CMS administrators confirm all staff before adding any new members with elevated permissions. Records are kept in CMS to provide historical knowledge and trend analysis for reporting purposes to CMS users and department management teams. Records are retained according to department records disposition schedules. In addition to working with sponsors on incidents and complaints, OPA also conducts routine program monitoring. Please don't be alarmed if you're contacted by OPA for a campus visit. OPA visits may strictly be consultative in nature to ensure that you and your staff are well informed about the incident reporting process. We may also contact you if there are areas of possible concern that we want to learn more about. This latter type of visit is referred to as an OPA field site review. Now, due to the sheer number of academic sponsors, routine site visits may be few and far between. Depending on the reason for our site visit, we may ask to observe your cross-cultural activities, exchange visitor orientations, or for copies of program descriptions, syllabi, or simplified student records to confirm enrollment. OPA may also request to meet with other members of a sponsor's institution or network that are involved with the administration of their exchange visitor program. If we are in your area, we may also reach out to you to see if you and your staff may be available for a friendly informational meeting. Now, to give some perspective to this, the Department of State's Office of Private Sector Exchange Administration's Academic and Government Unit, OPA-AG, has designated certain staff members to respond to incidents and complaints from different states. So this graphic here shows our current setup here in terms of analysts responding to incidents and complaints from different states, although I can say that it's always a team effort, so if somebody's out of the office on travel, you may have a different analyst or myself responding to an incident or a complaint that we receive. We are near the end of my presentation, but before we conclude, I prepared the next 3 slides as case studies to walk us through some real-world examples of OPA's recent engagement with sponsors. My intention here is to add to your perspective on what we just covered. Our first example here is a complaint that OPA received from a J1 research scholar. The exchange visitor alleged that she had been unfairly dismissed from her lab and that she wasn't informed of the 2-year bar following her program. OPA followed up with the sponsor for more information. The sponsor alleged that the research scholar did not perform basic lab functions, was unwilling to learn, and displayed erratic behavior. The sponsor explained that they had taken steps after a few incidents of noncompliance with safety and basic lab functions. They had advised the scholar to find another program. However, after the scholar threatened one of their lab staff, her supervisor dismissed her and the sponsor shortened her program. The sponsor offered her a ticket back home and set up a meeting with the scholar to discuss the implications to her visa status, including the 2-year bar, and any assistance the sponsor could offer her. Ultimately, OPA requested documents from both the sponsor and research scholar. The research scholar exchange visitor submitted a narrative of what she alleged happened, and the sponsor submitted narratives from the parties involved, including email communications between the exchange visitor and her principal investigator. After a thorough review, OPA determined that the scholar's allegations were unfounded and supported the sponsor in their decision. The outcome was communicated to both parties. Our second example involves an exchange visitor's death. The exchange visitor had no family in the United States with him when he passed away. The sponsor did not have experience with handling an exchange visitor's death before, but they did know to report it as an incident to OPA. When OPA asked the sponsor about any surviving family, they were able to determine that the exchange visitor's parents needed to acquire a visa to enter the United States. Upon knowing this, OPA asked our colleagues in the Bureau of Consular Affairs to consider assisting the exchange visitor's parents with an expedited visa interview. They complied, and the exchange visitor's parents were able then to quickly apply for a visa and travel to the United States to take care of the deceased exchange visitor's remaining affairs, as well as repatriation. Additionally, OPA then sent a condolence letter to the parents signed by the Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. Our third and last example here is to highlight the possible benefits that an OPA campus visit might have for a sponsor. As part of OPA's routine monitoring, we contacted a sponsor about an upcoming trip to their region. We expressed a desire to meet with the sponsor and their relevant colleagues to discuss the incident reporting process and the sponsor's exchange visitor program. The sponsor used this opportunity to bring together a variety of campus offices that may have involvement in the incident reporting process, including their campus police chief, Title IX officer, and the student conduct office. At the beginning of the meeting, the sponsor noted that this was the first time that all of these units had been in one room together to talk about international students. The conversation of incident reporting acted as a catalyst that spurred a number of ideas on how these respective units might start working more closely together. If you find yourself in a similar position on campus, I encourage you to reach out to us. Time permitting and capacity as well, we'd love to visit with you and your colleagues on your own campus. So before we open for questions, I want to share with you some Department of State points of contact that we discussed. The Department of State publicizes J-Visas at state.gov as the primary point of contact for all J1Visa exchange visitor program participants. The hotline number you see is not intended for sponsors. It's actually intended for exchange visitors to contact the department directly. We prefer that sponsors continue to email us with questions that they have via agalert@state.gov. At this point, I just want to thank you for your attention. As sponsors of the Exchange Visitor Program, the Department of State thanks you for partnering with us to provide a meaningful and valuable exchange program for each and every exchange visitor. I'll now take the rest of our time to respond to the pre-submitted questions, and pending our time availability today, any questions you may have submitted online during the presentation. So our first question here states, if our university were to have issues with J1 students whose immigration records we do not administer, but who attend our university to fulfill their status requirement, what would be our reporting responsibility? Well, thank you for your question. If your institution is hosting another sponsor's exchange visitors, and you are aware of reportable incidents or have other concerns about the exchange visitors, you should report that information to the sponsor as quickly as possible. Regardless of the location, sponsors are responsible for monitoring the site of activity and the progress and welfare of their respective exchange visitors. For this, I give you the citation of 22 CFR 62.10D2. OPA encourages all sponsors to discuss the incident reporting process with any prospective host institutions before an exchange visitors program begins. Our second question here, will the incident report be made into a form that can be submitted through CVIS or another more secure route? Well, the department is actually currently exploring the possibility of adopting a sponsor interface that would permit sponsors to submit incidents directly into a secure database. However, in the interim, OPA encourages sponsors to keep current with their email security practice to ensure the safe transmission and delivery of incident reports to AG Alert at state.gov. Our third pre-submitted question, please clarify to the J1 sponsor community that the incident reporting requirement applies to both J1s and J2s. Yes, it does. Sponsors must inform the department, among other things, of any investigations of an exchange visitor's site of activity or serious problem or controversy that could be expected to bring the department, the exchange visitor program, or the sponsor's exchange visitor program into notoriety or disrepute. For this, I cite 22 CFR 62.13D. This requirement is not limited to J1 exchange visitors and can include incidents involving a J2 accompanying spouse or dependents. Our fourth question here, with regards to 62.13D, is sponsor the responsible officer or any official at the J1 sponsoring institution? Because of their role in conducting official communications with the department relating to their sponsor's exchange visitor program, it's preferable if notifications under 62.13D are made by the responsible officer or an alternate responsible officer. However, in urgent situations, any officer or employee of the sponsor can deliver these notifications. Next question. If the exchange visitor reports the incident or allegation to OPA, does your office ask whether the RO or alternate responsible officer has been notified? Yes. Once received, OPA will ask the complainant if they have contacted the sponsor regarding their complaint before we begin our own review and analysis. Next question. In situations where the exchange visitor has reported directly to OPA and the alternate responsible officer or RO has not been notified, what is OPA's process with regards to involving the RO or ARO? If anyone besides the sponsor reports an event to the department, it is considered a complaint. And the sponsor will be notified by OPA of any complaints we receive regarding its exchange visitor program. In most cases, OPA collects information from both the sponsor and the complainant in order to objectively assess any complaints. Next question. How does OPA address situations where the allegation or incident arose in a third-party environment rather than the J1 sponsor's institution. For example, abuse of a J2 minor by an elementary school teacher. OPA's response to incidents will vary depending on the nature and severity of the incident, the parties involved, and other relevant factors. In all cases, OPA seeks to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the exchange visitor and any accompanying spouse or dependents. Next question. Are there specific additional responsibilities or duties on the part of the J1 sponsor to monitor third-party situations, or does OPA take over after the incident report is made? Depending on the type of incident, OPA may ask sponsors to provide updates on a reported incident. For example, if an exchange visitor is arrested off campus, OPA may ask the sponsor to provide updates on the outcome of a trial and/or whether the sponsor plans to take any action with respect to the exchange visitor's CVIS record as a result. Until that exchange visitor completes or otherwise ends his or her program and departs the country, it is the sponsor's responsibility to provide appropriate assistance to the exchange visitor. Let's see, I have a question here. Does serious illness or injury, like communicable disease, also include sexually communicable diseases? So the answer here is sponsors should use their best judgment as to whether a particular communicable disease, including a sexually transmitted disease, needs to be reported. OPA's primary goal in knowing about a serious illness or injury is an assessment of whether the exchange visitor is unable to continue his or her original program objectives, and whether additional steps are necessary to protect that exchange visitor's health, safety, and welfare. For example, communicable diseases that require an exchange visitor to be hospitalized or quarantined should be reported. Less serious diseases, or diseases that don't require quarantine or hospitalization, are not expected to inhibit the exchange visitor's continuation of program objectives, may not need to be reported. That said, when you're in doubt, contact us. Sponsors should always err on the side of reporting, and we'll engage with you about how much information we need. Next question. What latitude can be given to faculty members to take exchange visitors off campus in their personal vehicles? Who is responsible when a faculty person takes exchange students off campus for a weekend excursion not approved by the institution? Well, as we see it, these are internal management decisions to be made by the sponsor in accordance with its policies, the exchange visitor program regulations, and other applicable laws. If a reportable incident occurs during such an event, it should be reported to OPA. Otherwise, sponsors are at liberty to set and enforce their own protocol and rules for their exchange visitors and faculty in accordance with the exchange visitor program regulations and, again, other applicable laws. This next question is somewhat nuanced, but recognizing that some organizations are both sponsors for private sector exchanges as well as cooperating agencies for the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs, will you be able to cover the differences between a private sponsor organization's obligation to report incidents to OPA on their own behalf as a sponsor and their obligation to report to the appropriate ECA program office when they're a cooperating agency or grant recipient for an ECA-sponsored exchange? And in these particular situations, if you are a cooperating agency or a grant recipient running a program for an ECA office, what I'd like you to know is that OPA mines the database, for example, for tracking and recording these incidents for the Bureau. But the ECA program office, when under one of the ECA grants or cooperative agreements, still must be informed of the incident as part of the overall general program management. The ECA program office will still provide the oversight to the grantee or cooperative partner in addressing these kinds of matters. In both situations, OPA should still be informed of the incident. Next, we're going to go to a couple of the questions that we've received via the live chat, and we're going to get set up here to do some of that. Okay. So let me see if I can pull that up. Okay. So the one question, thank you, Rachel, for submitting this question. What are your suggestions to us in regards to collaboration between the ISO or the ISSS and the offices you mentioned in the last example, police, student conduct, Title IX? You know, this is a great question, and one that we stand ready to support your respective offices in initiating this dialogue about incident reporting. It's clear to us that there's going to be some examples where one of these offices might be engaged with responding to or receiving a reportable incident for an exchange visitor, and we want there to be as much collaboration and communication between your office and them as possible. And what we've seen in these cases is we've set up phone calls, for example, with institutions where we're on the phone with the ISO and they've invited those offices. We also encourage you to use this webinar and refer them to the J1Visas at state.gov website. So we've got another question here. Question is, what happens if submission of the incident report form could be in conflict with existing campus protocols? Well, as a department designated sponsor of the Exchange Visitor Program, we remind you that all sponsors are required to follow the department's regulations set forth in 22 CFR Part 62. Sponsors may wish to review their existing campus protocols to ensure that they can continue to comply and meet the Exchange Visitor Program requirements, especially 22 CFR 62.10 E, which is the request by the Department of State. So to read that, sponsors must, to the extent lawfully permitted, furnish the Department of State within the department requested time frame of all information, reports, documents, books, files, and other records or information requested by the Department of State and all matters related to their Exchange Visitor Program. We also want to remind sponsors that when initially contacting us via AG Alert at state.gov, to please include your sponsor program number on your initial emails. All right, folks. Did we get any more questions? It looks like we've had good participation, but if folks think of other questions, or if you're watching the recording of this in the future, please go ahead and submit those questions to AGAlert at state.gov. We're more than happy to address them. If we didn't get to your question today, we'll look at the IM chat here and get back to you at a later date once we've had an opportunity to look at it in more detail. All right, thank you everyone again for participating. We appreciate your interest and stewardship of the Exchange Visitor Program. Enjoy the rest of your day.